from business. When you are thinking about business, we must think about society. And when we say society, we're actually not just meaning society as in people. We're also talking about society as in the environment. And what responsibility does businesses have towards its environment? It's really, really important that we can't delineate. It's always a difficult word for me to say. We can't really separate out. Let's use a simple word. We can't really always separate out the impact of business. It is not just inward looking that I'll make my profit, I'll actually make my stakeholders, shareholders happy, and that's enough. That's not enough, actually. It is important that businesses now, at least, start thinking about what kind of impact are they creating on the business themselves, but also on the society and also on the environment. So we'll talk about three things here always in this module. We'll talk about the financial impact, we'll talk about the social impact, and we'll talk about the environmental impact. Collectively, what is do you know, does anyone know what is the term that we use normally for that? Can anyone think about I'm sure you've heard about it. Possibly. What is the term you can think about when you think about the impact of these three things for organizations? Anyone wants to take a guess? It's also the three P's. I'm sure I must probably mention in my seminars once. The three P's. One of them is profit. The other two, you know, people and planet. Always remember. I'm sure a lot of you knew this. I know the first year students normally take a little bit of time to start speaking, but it's profits, people, and planet. In other words, organizations sometimes refer to it as triple bottom line. Okay, the triple bottom line. Normally, bottom line is considered to be what's the financial impact, what's the profit and loss. I believe the investment and finance and accounting students will probably be more familiar with that sort of term. But often organizations ask, so tell me what the bottom line is. Tell me whether we made a profit or we're making a loss. Okay, but it's not just about the financial impact of it. We really need to understand what is the social impact or impact on society, and what's the environmental impact or impact on the environment. We must always think about all three in conjunction. We should not really be thinking about separately. Very, very important. Sadly, businesses have really not thought about this so far. They've always only thought about what's the impact on finances? What's the impact on my profits? Am I making enough profit or not? They haven't really thought about what is the impact on society. I'm paying people. Am I paying people enough? Are the working conditions that I'm providing to my workers good enough? Am I polluting the environment too much? Am I actually releasing sewage? Have you heard of this recently in the news? A lot of sewage companies, water companies have actually been releasing sewage in open waters, in rivers and lakes. And that's causing a lot of pollution. And perhaps in the future, it may cause a lot of diseases and illnesses to people. So there is an impact. Okay, if you dump too much of plastics, that's happened at the moment in your oceans, we know that fishes would consume that plastic. As a result of that, that plastic has actually gone into the fishes that we've eaten. And if you look at bloodstreams of people now, do the test, you'll find that there are lots of microplastics in our bloodstreams now as a result of pollution within the oceans. We are not isolated from any of these incidents that are happening around us right now. Every single one of us is being affected. We've got to really think about what our business is doing. Okay, Airbus, you heard of the company, one of the largest aircraft makers in the world. They were fined 860 million pounds a couple of years ago, $1 billion. For what? Bribery charges, corruption charges, because they wanted to sell more aircraft, and they actually went and bribed some government officials in some countries. And they were investigated, and they were fined $1 billion for that purpose. Okay. Have anyone seen the movie Deepwater Horizon, by the way? Anyone heard of it? Deepwater Horizon. Watch it next time when you get a chance. It's about the BP oil spill in 2011 in the Gulf of Mexico. Right? The movie shows true depiction of the true events that happened. The engineers were drilling in an offshore oil rig, and they started to see some sort of soil coming out, wet soil coming out with the oil when they were drilling. And the engineer's response was, let's just stop. This could be dangerous. Okay. However, the managers, they flew in with their helicopters and they landed on the rig and they saw the data and everything. And they said, let's carry on drilling. Why is that? Because the barrel production, the amount of oil you produce and show to the world, that actually has an impact on the share prices of the company. And the share prices would have dipped or would have been negatively impacted if they had actually stopped drilling there. They carried on and there was a huge blast. 18 people, I think, died, and a number of people had to be rescued from there. It was completely on fire. Now, what's the implication for organizations? What's the implication for BP? What do you think might have happened to BP? Shares dropped. So actually, the value of the company dropped significantly. What else? What else might have happened? So there's clearly a financial impact. Regulatory compliance, they didn't comply with the regulations that they should have stopped. Badly damaged reputation. Absolutely. Reputational risk is one of the biggest factors for why companies must think about being responsible and ethical. What else? Do you think investigations would normally follow from these kind of events? Yes, they were fined $500 billion by the US government for neglecting their responsibilities and not being compliant. On top of that, they had to pay compensation to local fishermen for damaging the ecology and the fisheries of that region. A huge reputational loss, a huge loss of value, a huge amount of compensation, and of course, a big fine that they had to pay. So these things, they have to. So ultimately, what you would say is, we want organizations to be more responsible. Have you heard of Volkswagen's Dieselgate scandal? Anyone? Happened about 4 or 5 years ago. Volkswagen, you know about the company, the car manufacturer. About 5 years ago, they manipulated the emissions that were coming out. So they created a software and placed that a chip near the engine or somewhere in the software system. I don't know how that exactly physically happened. But when under test conditions, when the US regulators were testing those cars, it showed a lower emission. It just manipulated that emission. The car would somehow detect, the software would detect that the car is right now under test conditions, and that will start showing lower readings. But when the car was out on the road, it would actually show huge amount of emissions. Not just show, they actually were huge amounts of emissions. So the company was basically lying about it. And the company was, of course, caught. There was an investigation. And it so happened that the company, of course, again, loss of reputation, value of the company in terms of share prices, fines, change of personnel. So it's important to understand that unethical practices are quite prevalent in the organization. And to some extent, and that's my personal opinion, is that business schools around the world are to blame for that. Why is that? Because we never taught ethics and responsible management to students who come and sit around in benches like what you're doing right now. Business schools must take that responsibility to say, if we don't teach you responsible management, how can we expect you to be responsible managers in the future? And so therefore, things have changed. And this module is one of the results of that change, that we want to teach you what is responsible management. We want to really let you know what is ethics in business management, how your decisions can be shaped by ethical thinking. And that's exactly what the purpose of this module is all about, right? So let's start that on that note. Global challenges for business and society. We're going to cover 5 things today. I'm going to introduce the module to you. I know we've done that in the seminars to some extent, so I'll not really spend too much time on that. Introduction to the module. We'll talk about the assignments, a little bit about responsible management and leadership. Manon Forrester is, I would say, was the guest speaker in the morning session. She didn't come here. She was online, so I've recorded that. And I'll see if I can play the whole of it. It's half an hour. It might be too long, but I'll definitely upload it on GC Learn so you can watch it afterwards. One of the good things about Manon graduated from GCU in 2021. So she actually did her BA honors in business management, international business with finance at GCU here. In 2021, she then joined. By the way, she was very extremely active with Enactus. What Melissa told us about about that in the start of the lecture. Very active. She was a brilliant student, of course. It was a joy to teach her. Once she finished, she joined as an administrator with BITC. BITC stands for Business in the Community. It's a network organization across the UK which supports organizations to say, if you want to actually create sustainability strategy, we can help you with that. We can connect you with other like-minded people who can actually help you. So BITC is a good place to understand how responsible management and leadership happens within organizations. I will pass on Manon's email ID to you. You can make her a friend on LinkedIn and get in touch with her. She's always very, very supportive and helpful. From being an administrator, she then moved on to become a client relationship manager. And now she's just been promoted to a sustainability strategy advisor within, and she advises organizations now about, thank you, Melissa, very kind of you. She now advises organizations about sustainability, how to create strategy, how to respond to things, etc., and that sort of thing. So that's Manon. Within a span of 2.5 years, she's actually grown quite a lot within the organization. And then we'll talk finally about carbon literacy training, watch a couple of videos, and then we'll go home after that. I hope that I can cover all that in an hour or so, right? So introduction to the module, you've already seen much of that content. You got the module code, it's on GC Learn, you got 20 credits as normal. Lectures on a Friday from 10 to 12 or 3 to 5. We got 40 seminars. Of course, we needed to divide people, and that's run on different days of the week. So your CellCat timetable must be able to tell you about which seminar you're in. What we wanted to talk to you about was what is sustainability and what is sustainable development. Have you heard of these terms before? It's very common terms nowadays. It's very much in the news all the time. And everybody's talking about what is sustainability and what is sustainable development. I have to always go back because I'm out of range. Okay, right. So it's important that we start understanding global challenges. Now, all of you have had your seminars by this point, and we've discussed about global challenges, and you may have talked about that in the context of your own degrees in your seminars. But sustainability has become a really important aspect. Sustainability and sustainable development are in the foreground of contemporary challenges facing business and society worldwide, not just in UK, not just in Europe, not just in America, not just in the developed world, but in the entire world. Now, if there is any business that says that we don't know or we don't care about sustainability and sustainable development, then they are pretty much, if they are not already, they'll definitely be out of the race very soon. Because every single organization around the world must be now thinking about sustainability and sustainable development. And we need to understand what that is. So the overall aim of this module is to help you develop intellectual skills and deeper understanding of the challenges associated with the transition to more sustainable systems of consumption and production. So we're talking about a change, a transition from what we're doing now, which is polluting a lot, using a lot of fossil fuels, not providing poor working conditions, generating a lot of waste because of our consumption habits, and unsustainable production, to transition to what? Renewable energy, responsible management, sustainable management, better supply chains, better logistics, less wastage, responsible consumption, etc., etc., etc. So that transition has to happen. It's happening right now. Okay, and we need to be part of that transition. It's really important that we do. Okay, that overall aim is now broken down into 3 parts. First of all, from the module's perspective, to help you develop a critical appreciation of issues and challenges. If you don't know about what the issues and challenges are, how can you respond to them? So that basic understanding, the fundamentals, is really important. What I will do for the seminars in week 3, I'll actually create a list of terms. It's important that you understand what these terms are. What are we talking about? We're talking about climate change. We're talking about triple bottom line. We're talking about net zero, zero carbon, carbon neutrality, carbon finance. What are we talking about? These things are really important. When you finish your degrees and go out in the industry, this is the terminology people are using. And it's important that you understand what this terminology is, that you have a good handle of it. Not just that, you also develop your skills about calculating carbon footprint. For example, if the company is creating a sustainability report that every company has to now do, at least the large companies, they might be saying, oh, let's find out what our emissions are. Oh, but the emissions are broken down into 3 parts: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. You got to know what those are. Okay, you got to know what the frameworks that the United Nations are putting forward. It's really important that we start understanding what is GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, for example. Okay, what is UNGC, United Nations Global Compact? All these, what is COP? COP26 in Glasgow happened in 2021. Communication of the parties. So what are these frameworks? What is this terminology that will at least give us a good fundamental working knowledge of what sustainability is? Really important. SDGs, have you heard of SDGs before? Anyone? Those who've heard about it, what do you think that stands for? Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much. Absolutely correct. It's a United Nations initiative. There are 17 goals, and each goal is targeting something: poverty, gender equality, climate change, etc., etc. So that fundamental knowledge is really important. Secondly, to act as a stepping stone into your degree program is a transition module to enable your education for sustainable development in the context of your specific degrees. So regardless of what you're doing, law in economics or fashion and marketing or international business or business management or investments and risks or media and journalism, it's important that you understand this is the fundamental, this is the basics. You then build upon it as you go along. And the thirdly, to develop your critical skills by evaluating the contemporary world of work. Things have changed over the last 3-4 years. Since Brexit, since COVID, the post-pandemic recovery is going on at the moment. And one of the most visible impacts of that has been the way we work. No longer people are going into work 5 days a week, are they? Not anymore. People are working remotely. Technology is supporting that, but also because in COVID, we started doing that. We started to work remotely, most of us. And that's carried on. I had a student last year. So we have a program called the Graduate Apprenticeship in BA Honors in Business Management. And students who are working full-time can actually come and take that degree. And they only attend lectures like 12 days in a year or something like that. And the rest of it is all online. So it's a distance learning kind of program. Everybody's working full-time. Now, this student of mine, he used to work in a government organization called Ofgem. Have you heard of that? Office of Gas, Electricity, and something like that, right? So they're the controllers, like Ofcom, for advertisements and that sort of thing. He created a dissertation, a final year dissertation, and his topic was the impact of hybrid working on organizations' climate performance, employee well-being, and organizational performance overall. Okay, they found it to be too relevant. The findings very clearly said that most employees would want to come some days to office, but they would actually want to work from home some days as well. So it wasn't like everybody said, I want to come 5 days to the office, or everybody said, I want to work from home 5 days a week. That wasn't the case. People wanted to have a mix because we're all, we want to meet other people. We don't want to work in isolation all the time. And so that was a really important consideration. And because of that, it actually had an impact on the organization's carbon footprint, the amount of emissions that the organization emitted, and of course, an impact on the well-being. If people are happy, they're more likely to be more productive. And so therefore, organizational performance will improve as a result of that. So it's really important that we understand all of those things. On the basis of that, we then created the learning outcomes for this module. And there are 5 learning outcomes for this module. Critically evaluate the role of business in society in the context of environmental, social, and governance challenges. And we mapped it to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. All of them, particularly SDG number 4, which is quality education. Understand United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and assess the role of responsible leadership in order to fulfill these goals by enabling organizations to do good making positive contributions to society and enhancing firm performance, all SDGs again. Learning outcome 3, understand the nature of climate emergency and be able to evaluate their personal contribution, your personal contribution to carbon emissions through taking action to demonstrate development of the sustainability mindset, which is SDG 13 in particular, climate action. And we're going to talk about that in the next 4 weeks. Weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6 is when we do what we call as carbon literacy training. Okay. And we will try and understand. Now, what's the important word in that sentence is the sustainability mindset. We can give you all the knowledge that you want. We can tell you about all the frameworks. We can give you all the concepts and everything. But that doesn't mean that you will act on it. And I'm not really interested in you just taking the knowledge and going away from there. I want you to learn practical skills as well at the same time. So if I asked you, can you calculate your carbon footprint? Has anyone calculated, by the way, their carbon footprint so far? Ever? Anyone? Okay, right. So carbon footprint, what that might be, by the way? What do you think carbon footprint may be? What does it mean? You know the answer? You look like you know the answer now. Okay, you want to try? Attempt it? Anyone? What do you think is carbon footprint? What does it mean? Let me help you. The total amount of the emissions, thank you. The total amount of emissions that individuals, organizations, entities emit. So whatever we do, anything that we do, think about your life 24/7. What do? We wake up in the morning, the heating is on, we change our clothes or we take a shower, we eat our breakfast, we then travel to the university either by car, by bus, by train, walk, cycle, etc. We then come here, sit in this room, the heating is on, the projector is on, we're using electricity. You got your notebooks in front of you, you got your tablets and laptops and phones, etc., etc. You use energy, you've charged that phone overnight. You got furniture in this room, you got computers in this room, and all those things. You have lunch, you then go back home, you either probably study in the library or do something else at home, your heating is on, or you go out with friends, you watch cinema, you go for a dinner, etc., etc., etc. Your clothes that you buy, the food that you buy, every single thing that we do in our lives, every single thing, things that we can think about, things you can't think about, has a relative CO2 emission. Okay, carbon dioxide emission. Every single thing that we do, directly or indirectly. We can calculate that. We can actually pinpoint every single thing that we do. And there are calculators out there that will help us to actually calculate our own individual carbon footprints. Unless you've done that, you won't be able to say, oh, I've never actually thought about this behavior. I never thought coming to university by car, how is that impacting the environment? How is it actually adding up to my CO2 emissions? Can I change something in that? Can I actually bring a friend along with me? And that basically just halves your emissions. Okay, how many days do you come to campus? Normally about 3 days, 3, 4, or 5 days, depending on when your lectures are. And so it might be really useful to understand. When you buy your food from the supermarket, have you ever thought about where that food is coming from? Has anyone looked at the labels? It's compulsory, I think, pretty much in the UK, that the labels must mention not just the nutritional value, the breakdown of carbohydrates and salt and whatnot, sugar, but protein and whatnot, but also where that food was produced. Anyone? Where is your food coming from? Depends on tomatoes, let's say. Bananas. Most likely African countries. Your tomatoes are coming from Spain or Morocco. Some food is transported all the way from Peru in frozen containers. Some food, a lot of lamb actually comes from New Zealand. A lot of beef is, of course, produced more locally. But lamb, a lot of these supermarkets who sell lamb, they actually are importing it from New Zealand, much of it. But we have to start thinking about, what is the impact of lamb produced in New Zealand and transported all the way to Scotland? There must be some footprint attached to it. So that is part of your knowledge and skill. But until you develop a sustainability mindset, that will not lead to any action. And what I'm interested is that you learn the knowledge, yes, very important, but you also learn the skills and the tools to be able to make a difference to your own life and to everybody else's. Learning outcome number 4, identify and analyze global challenges and trends and apply appropriate skills and approaches necessary to manage and lead business within its context. And finally, learn and apply reflection, critical thinking skills, and team working in order to achieve the 4 learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4 to enable successful transition into university studies and future employability. So your 4 years and then the years beyond those 4 years need to be supported as well. But why do we need to study? But before that, I would answer the question, why do we need to teach you about global challenges? Number 1, it is no less true in business education now in the business world that developing and evolving is necessary for staying current. And sustainability is the current topic. It'll stay like that for the next 50 to 70 years, which means that your career and my career is all part of that sustainability discussion. You can't say now in 2024 that if I don't want to learn about sustainability, you can't say that anymore. Employers will not accept those CVs now anymore. And the video that you will see that Manon Forrester will tell you, she's actually presented a report, a survey that was conducted among CEOs of all large companies within the UK. And they asked them, what is the biggest risk that you think there is? And they said there is not enough talent with green skills. Clearly, there are not enough people out there with skills about how to calculate carbon emissions of an organization. They don't know what is the impact of replacing a fossil fuel of a petrol car or a diesel car with an electric car. So these skills and knowledge is important, and I believe that that's what you will learn within the university, within your degree, over the next 4 years' time. Businesses and other organizations in society face changing environments and new challenges. We've got more intense and severe and more frequent storms now. Our life will change as a result of that. Okay, we need to understand how do we respond to it. After 142 years, the UK closed down the last of its coal plants. Did you hear that news in the news yesterday or day before? Yes, there'll be a huge impact of that. Do we have enough capacity to actually have renewable energy? Do we have enough wind farms? Do we have enough solar energy? Do we have enough tidal power? No. So we had to rely on something else. Maybe that we have to buy power from somewhere else, some other country, and that'll be expensive. So that transition is happening right now, and we got to be part of that transition. There's a lot of new technology coming up where you're basically creating hydrogen as a fuel to be able to support your airline travel. It's not at the scale yet, but they're working towards it. Your shipping consumes a lot of diesel. How can they actually change the fuel so that make it more sustainable? Everybody is thinking about that. It's really, really, really important. And why study sustainability and responsible management? Teaching sustainability and responsible management is a good example of change being driven by development both inside academia and from the outside, represented by the business world, as well as changes from the inside in what the most talented students like yourselves expect from an education. It's a demand from the students. So it's a push and a pull. We're trying to understand what the outside world wants and demands, but we're also trying to understand what the students want. And survey after survey after survey of university students have actually told us, and other universities, that if you don't teach sustainability as part of the business curriculum, you're not giving them enough skills to be employable in the future. So it's really important that you learn these things while in a safer environment like being in the university. In 2013, GCU, as I mentioned about PRIME, PRME, Principles of Responsible Manager Education, we joined that global movement. And that is basically supporting, it's like a forum of academics around the world, which is trying to do one thing, raise the profile of sustainability in schools around the world, and to equip today's business students like yourselves with the understanding and ability to deliver change tomorrow. You can't do it without the understanding and ability. And to ensure that they provide future leaders, the universities provide future leaders with the skills needed to balance economic, and sustainability goals. Think about the triple bottom line, not just about the economic impact, but also about the social and the environmental impact, while drawing attention to the Sustainable Development Goals and aligning academic institutions with the work of the UN Global Compact. It's really important. There are external agencies like the QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education. They've mentioned that an understanding of responsible leadership will incorporate authentic, values driven, inclusive, ethical, sustainable, systemic, and transformative leadership, which considers the interests and perspectives of different stakeholders, both now and for the future, while focusing on addressing climate change and other key challenges, for example, leading towards net zero, another thing to make a list in your terminology list, in fair and inclusive ways. So there is this push from external agencies to the universities to say there is demand in the market. We want you to include sustainability as part of your curriculum. And as a result of that, in GCU in particular, we refresh all our programs every 5 years. We refreshed our program last year. So this is the first time this new program is being implemented. We created new modules. We mapped all our learning outcomes to SDGs, and we've actually included in the content of our modules these things. So the topics to be covered in this module are responsible management and leadership from week 6 and 7 onwards, sustainable finance, digital transformation and artificial intelligence. You can't do without that either nowadays. The changing world of work, hybrid and remote working, like I mentioned before, impact on employee well-being and organizational performance, sustainable fashion, marketing and branding, sustainability, economic policy and law. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're doing a law degree, you don't need to learn about fashion and marketing. If I'm doing a media and journalism degree, I don't need to learn about investment and risk. We all have to do that. Okay, it's really important that we do. And so therefore, everybody will be learning about everything in each week. And the seminar will actually then be connected to that particular module. And finally, we'll be learning about climate change. And that will be done through carbon literacy training in weeks 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that'll be starting next week. Okay.